Gun owners of Reddit, if semi-automatic firearms were banned tomorrow and the government required you to turn them all in, what would it take to get you to comply? What would be a reason to why you wouldn't comply? Canadian gun owner here. Bears, cougars, wolves. I am not joking. Bear spray is a good idea, but sometimes you don't want to get that close. A bolt action or pump gun is not a fun way to meet a charging bear. I also live in a very rural woodland area. Gun ownership here is virtually mandated, and ownership rates are through the roof, even for the states. However, we have virtually no violent gun crime. It's all about culture, training, and background checks. I know I am at a higher risk of someone in my life being accidentally or intentionally shot, but the risk is actually very low. I drove my whole family 3,000 miles on a road trip vacation. That was far riskier. Nope, no way. There is nothing that would get me to comply. I would hide them before I would turn them in, because an unarmed population is easily enslaved. I'm native. We were raised on stories of what happened after we allowed ourselves to be disarmed. Wounded Knee. Trail of Tears. We will not be disarmed again. The Second Amendment was written in the immediate time frame of a bloody revolution. The founding fathers knew what a corrupt and overly powerful government could do, because they had to claw their existence away from one. The Second Amendment allowed the people to retain their own power as a collective. It's an extension of the checks and balances system amongst the three branches of federal government. The population checks and balances the government. That's what it has always been about. Gun owners are trained, typically through generations traced back to men who fought and died for this country in one capacity or another. Most gun owners are content hunting or sport shooting, and hope to never have to use their weapons for anything else. But there is, ingrained in our national psyche, the fundamental instinct to protect our freedom at whatever cost. Revolutions are horrible, tragic, bloody, and necessary. I pray to God we never have to experience one. But an armed and trained populace can change the outcome. The first step of any dictator or oppressor is to disarm the population. Once that's accomplished, the hardest step is out of the way, which is why it is the responsibility of every citizen to uphold the Constitution, including the Second Amendment. Ideally, we will never, ever have to use it, but if the day comes that our freedom or country is threatened, we will be prepared, as the founding fathers intended. Replacing them with dual-wield needlers. That'd be sick af. I'm Native American. We don't have fond memories of turning in guns to the government. I doubt there's many fond memories your people have with the US government. What guns? There is a side to this debate I don't often hear about. There are places in our country that are still subsistence communities. This is different than just being places that are avid hunters. This is places where the majority of caloric intake is obtained through hunting and gathering. I live in such a place. Living in western Alaska, we honestly rely on firearms to eat. Ammo goes into the grocery section of my monthly budget. Bolt action rifles work, but are not nearly as efficient. When hunting large game for subsistence purposes, you want to be as efficient as possible, especially in winter. Also, we deal with a large amount of predatory animals here in western Alaska, the most dangerous being black bears, which, while smaller, are more aggressive and live in closer proximity to people. Just this last summer there were 2 fatal bear attacks, one of a child in a marathon race where there should have been enough people and noise to scare off any wild animals, and another of a mine worker who used bear spray on a bear and then it turned back around and mauled her. An extremely odd situation, as bear spray should have been enough. A firearm is definitely enough. I understand these are very specific issues that pertain to minority portions of the country, but living where I do, I wish they were legitimized a bit more in the debates. Exactly. I want to put any lawmaker, or anyone, really, who is for confiscation of firearms in a room with a couple rabid skunks for an hour. Where I grew up, you couldn't wait for animal control to show up and take care of things. You had to put dangerous animals down quickly, otherwise you risk lives and livestock. I actually just lost my entire collection in a deep water boating accident. Somewhere in the United States there's a lake with millions of guns in it. I wouldn't be too fond of handing over my guns because a guy with a gun said I had to. The Constitution does not give us the right to own weapons. The Constitution requires the government to ensure our right to own weapons. So, if the government decided to confiscate my weapons, I'd hide them, and so would hundreds of thousands of others. That's right. People have a difficult time discerning the difference between rights and laws. Rights are enshrined in freedom and liberty. The government cannot create them. It is the government's duty to protect these rights. A better question would be, how can Reddit and the general population one day hate law enforcement and the next day be like trust the government and law enforcement? Surrender your arms. Trump is Hitler. Everyone surrender your guns to Trump. They'll have to trade me for another civil right that they've already taken from me and yet still fail miserably to protect any of us. Since I think my AR-15 is super cool, and I liked building it and love shooting it, I'm going to ask that the government give us back the 4th Amendment that was forcibly surrendered after 9/11 to George Bush. Also, eliminate the Department of Homeland Security and the NSA. But since they're not going to do any of that, I'd prefer to not outsource my personal security to the one entity that fails at everything yet keeps asking for more. I think any ban would be immediately challenged in the courts and would put the immediate ban on hold until it could be resolved. If it were resolved and still somehow managed to go through, I wouldn't comply for many reasons, including that the Second Amendment was never intended for hunting or even self-defense purposes. It was literally put there to protect the people from the government and prevent the government from turning into a dictatorship. Another reason that I and many others wouldn't comply is that the government doesn't have the means to make it worth the time or effort to comply. If the government can't even get people to comply with immigration laws, drug laws, tax laws or most other laws on the books, how can they expect anyone to comply with this law? They would have to pay full purchase price plus included accessories and include some additional financial incentive for my time and effort. If you simply take the number of semi-auto rifles owned by US citizens and multiply that by the average purchase price and 10% for accessories, then the cost quickly rises into the hundreds of billions. Where will this money come from? I think the decision-making flowchart for most gun owners goes like this. Are my hands cold and or dead? If yes, take my gun. If no, frick off. What would it take to get you to comply? Lots and lots of money for each gun. What would be a reason to why you wouldn't comply? The fact that G-men would have to come to my house with guns to take my guns. I would simply bury all my guns in the woods behind the house. Private sales, they're gone. I would need both reimbursements for the pre-turn and value of the guns and a much higher police presence. There are areas near me where police just don't go. I use my firearms almost exclusively for hunting. Most of the food I eat is wild game, not to mention how much damage the wildlife does to crops throughout the country. I can't honestly think of a scenario where I would turn over my firearms. A question someone asked me once was, would you rather be put in jail because you defended your family during a house robbery with an illegal gun and your family is safe and alive, or would you rather have a family member killed during a house robbery because your legal baseball bat is surprisingly no match to a gun? I am not saying that illegally owning guns is okay. Illegal gun ownership is the problem in my opinion. But I would take protecting my family and being put in jail over having my family killed in a robbery any day. But jokes on the robber. My home is a gun-free zone, so it looks like they have to use another weapon. It would take a massive buyout per firearm. I've had home invaders before, pretending to be someone who broke down along the highway and needed to use my phone at 3 AM. If I didn't have my shotgun behind the door when they tried to force their way in, there is no way the police would have made it in time before they had their way with us. They saw the gun and ran, jumped into their truck and sped off. Had it not been for that shotgun, there's no telling what horror story I'd be posting here instead. I didn't even have to fire it. No one was hurt and they've never came back. Had they just entered without knocking, I would have used my semi-auto pistol I keep at my nightstand. If someone has made it inside your home, you don't want a shotgun or revolver. Increases the chance you'll hurt someone you love with the spread penetration recoil. A simple 9mm semi-automatic pistol is perhaps the best self-defense weapon you can have. Decent stopping power, plentiful ammunition, low collateral damage, perfectly manageable recoil so there's no stray shots, and a shorter barrel for better mobility and the unlikelihood of it being taken away and used against you. Honestly, nothing. Only one of them is registered to me, but it's my favorite, and it's semi-automatic. I own one non-semi-automatic gun, and the only reason I keep it is that it's a family heirloom. It sucks to shoot, it's more dangerous to the person using it, and it's a shotgun, which I'm not a fan of to begin with. The problem with the semi-automatic thing is that it's a really broad brush. Most of the guns that are out there are semi-automatic, and with the level of proliferation that guns have, combined with the culture behind them, you'd never be able to take away enough guns to make any sort of buyback plan effective. Criminals aren't going to turn in their guns because they're criminals, and many if not most, law-abiding gun owners wouldn't turn in their guns because it defeats the point of them owning a gun in the first place. By all means, ban the AR-15 stocks that allow you to bump fire, but the Second Amendment is there to prevent the people from being made incapable of fighting back against a tyrannical government. And although the difference between the small arms that are available to citizens and the unmanned drones that the government now has is seemingly unsurmountable, the level to which we are armed means the government would still need to think twice before steamrolling the people if they chose to go that route. Guarantee me you'll take them away from the criminals first, and I'll gladly give you mine. Honestly, if the government is demanding I give up my guns, I would be more fearful of the government than I would any person labeled a criminal. When the gunshots in my low-income neighborhood stop, I might feel safe enough to disarm. Financial compensation? You're asking me to give up thousands of dollars worth of personal property because of something someone else did. You have been visited by the Be Humble, Be Stay Humble and Believe in Yourself. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check out another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.